I am Pastor Bill of Meat of the Word Ministries. I want to talk to you about an obscure statement that the Apostle Paul spoke of in the book of Romans, and a verse that's not, matter of fact, I don't think I've ever heard anybody on the Christian circles in all the years that I've been ministering refer to this. Now, I know I've preached on this a great deal, but I don't remember ever hearing a sermon on this statement because we're so, and I'm going to talk about the law here and the commandment of God. Paul wrote in Romans chapter 7, verse 12, and the law was holy, or the law is holy, and the commandment holy, just, and good. The law, talking about the Old Testament law, the law of Moses, that law that we're no longer under as Christians, Paul said three things about it. He said that law was holy, not once holy, but is holy, and secondly, is good, and thirdly, is just. The law is holy, just, and good. Now, most Christians don't hear much about that because we've been taught we're not under the law anymore. And somehow or other, we just think that the law no longer has anything to do with us. So, and I'm a strong believer in studying the New Testament because we live under the New Testament. We are Christians. Our covenant is under Christ through a New Testament with better promises. And the grace of God is available to us. But we must understand that that does not give us license to ignore the Old Testament. Again, Paul was always referring and interpreting the Old Testament. All the early church leaders were always referring to the Old Testament to explain the New. And that's one of the purposes and one of the reasons why the Old Testament was holy, just, and good, because it gave us something to be able to interpret what it was and why we need to live by faith and not by the commandment alone, why we can receive grace, why the New Testament is so important. The New Testament explains the Old Testament. And therefore, if we didn't have the Old Testament, we would not be able to have an explanation of what's holy. We would not have an explanation of what is just, and we would not have an explanation of what is good. The Old Testament serves us greatly. The Bible, not just the Old Testament history, but the commandments, the law and the commandments. If we study those things out with an open heart, not allowing it to bring us under condemnation and destroy us, but rather so that we can identify. That's the purpose. That's why Paul said, he said, so that sin might appear as sin and help us to understand how it's exceedingly sinful. And if we ignore the Old Testament laws and commandments, thinking that, we're not under them anymore, well, we'll begin to just do anything we want, whenever we want, and thinking, well, we're believers, we're Christians, and so therefore we don't need to study to show ourselves approved. When the Apostle Paul said study to show yourself approved, at that time he was talking about studying the Old Testament scriptures. Paul clearly knew the Old Testament, although he taught the grace of God, although he taught a New Testament, a new covenant with better promises and the grace of God available to us. Absolutely. He was not saying that we now have a license to sin, as many Christians think we do today. There are many of you that may be listening to me today and you just think the Old Testament is worthless. It's been banned from us. It's been barred from you, that you don't have to read it or study it or know anything about it. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. The Apostle Paul, anointed by God for the perfecting of the saints, knew and he explained that the law and its commandments was holy and just and good. It helps us to identify what is sin and what is not sin. Now see, the Jews of old had a hard time understanding it because they just lived by the dictates of this commandment. The law was this, and they squabbled over tithing, mint, and herbs and things of this nature, but they lost the spirit of it. Now, I want to emphasize the spirit of the law. It's the commandment of the law will kill you, but the spirit of the law will liberate you because it'll help you to see this is how to love God. How to love God with all of your heart. How to love God with all of your strength and might. How to turn the other cheek. Jesus came and explained not a new law, but rather a new dimension of the law. He came out to explain the spirit of the law. And for us to understand the spirit of the law, we have to have the foundation of the law and its commandments itself. So I want to encourage you, Don't throw away your Old Testament. Don't throw away and ban the 10 Commandments and think that you don't have to worry about those things. Those 10 Commandments are holy and just and good. And all of the law, everything that Moses pointed out, was helpful for us to lay a good foundation so that we could recognize what is sin and what is righteousness, and how to live a good life and how not to. I mean, all those laws that tell us those little finite things of how to treat your fellow man, all of that is good. All of that is holy. All of that is just. Hey, you have a great day in Christ Jesus. Know the law so that you can know what sin is and know how to get yourself free of it. God bless.